I'm Jack Putnam. Been using the combination machine probably for almost 30 years now. And what I do is what would have been done in a Ford garage in the 20s. I try to follow their processes as much as possible, use the same equipment they would have used, and hopefully use it as they would have done. Yes, this equipment is somewhat dated, but it can be modernized, and I still use it today. The only differences are some of the equipment has to be reground for different sizes, because you can't go out and buy a new crankshaft for $5, and which was very common to do back then. I've been found a lot of different things with the A engine or the T engine that's interesting. They do differ from the A. All of this equipment has no names on it. It doesn't say it's Model T. All Model A equipment will say Model A, because at that time they had to differentiate between the T and the A equipment. A equipment is simply heavier. Otherwise, it's going to do the same job. Try to give you an idea of what you would have used in the K.O. Wilson combination machine. And the combination machine was made, the reason it's called combination is because you can do boring, you can do run-in, and you can do main bearings on it. So that's why you get those choices. I have done boring. I do not recommend it. Accuracy is more or less. Babbitting does work, and that is not hard to do. And if you think back in the late teens, early 20s, when this machine came out, they needed something which was foolproof, and that's why Ford endorsed it. You can replicate what you're doing each time without making a lot of mistakes. It's a matter of doing a set of steps in order. It's not hard, it's not rocket science, but you've got to do things in order. So I'll try to give you an idea of what some of the equipment is. This is a pouring frame. It's used for the bearings in the block. These pieces are called pouring dams. They simply fit up against the frame to guide the hot babbitt into the block. That's all they do. One is quite smaller because of the machine. In the front corner, you can't get a long dam in place. You have to use a small one. In working with these, it's all hot when it is done. And height. After babbitt is poured, this is the boring bar. It simply bores the initial hole through the babbitt. Set of cutters are fixed in position, non-adjustable. After you've bored the block, it's ringed. The reason it's ringed is to get everything in perfect alignment. This particular reamer that I've got here is I believe it's a Stevens reamer. I didn't bother to read who made it. It varies slightly than the Ford reamer, but all are tapered, all are made to cut the bearings to a specific size. The thing about these reamers, they are 2 to 3 thousandths undersized here. There is a lead cut onto the cutting bar, and then the full size further back. It bores a hole at 1.250. Crankshafts are 1.248. It gives you 2 thousandths clearance for oil. This is called the false camshaft. And it is simply a reference bar on which the guides here on the boring frame rest up against, so that everything can be cut precisely the same spot. The reason, you've got timing gears which have to mesh perfectly. That's the reason you have to have a guide stop for it. This can also be used to drive out the rear cam bushing. It either fits in the cam bushing, that's why it's got a step down on the end, or you drive bushing out entirely. That's your choice. After you pour bearings, they tend to shrink away from the block. This hammer is used to set the bearings back against the block. So the bearings are not pinned to the block. They're held mechanically by holes in the casting. That's what's going to hold the bearing in place. Bearing caps are a different story. They are pinned to the cap, whereas the block is simply mechanically held. And you can tell by the flange on the end of this, it's seen a few bearing jobs in the past. This would have been probably a 1920s tool. I was fortunate a couple of weeks ago to secure for the Museum of Babbitt swords. A little side story to this. This came out of ballast of a sailing boat on Lake Michigan. It was made in Seattle, Washington. How the two connected, I don't know. But that's the history of this. This particular Babbitt is what they call nickel Babbitt. It has a little bit of nickel in the mix, typically for use. I think it was 94% tin, 3% copper, and about 3% antimony. And a little bit of nickel to this. It makes a harder, a harder Babbitt. So, I'll show you the setup. That simply sets in the block. And as soon as I find the screwdriver, we'll get it set right. Fortunately, I carry a small screwdriver in my pocket. The ends of the bearings, when they're forward, to keep them from flowing out, are held in place by some set collars. That's all those are. There are 6 of them. The ones in the center have a radius cut on them. Small and do. The front one is very small. Screw. This simply gives you a radius on the bearing. If you've got a question, ask. Don't just sit there and wonder. That might do it. Yeah, it'll work. I am doing this the way the garage would have done it when I actually do it in my own shop. I elevate this slightly to get a thicker core, which is then cut away. I work with a block warmed. It's not hot per se, but it's warm. A little hot, warmer than what you want to put your hand on.
Did they have torches back in the day?
Yeah, they did. As a matter of fact. I forgot to drop these on there first. I work with all of that stuff hot, which can lead you to be real cautious. Pouring the bearing takes about 20 seconds. getting the crankshaft in that babbitt can take a couple hours. The babbitt will solidify almost immediately once it hits the block. I did use some cotton wadding to block the oil holes in the block. I've already put that in. If you don't put that in, the babbitt ends up on the floor immediately, or in your shoes. Back in 1920, they didn't have a thermocouple to check your babbitt temperature. So I used the original thermocouple that they would have used, which is a pine stick. Stick the pine stick in the babbitt. If the babbitt's off the temperature, it's going to vibrate. You can almost hear it in a way. But you can definitely feel it. Now this is plenty hot. Of course, it will burn the stick a little bit, but any piece of pine will work. We'll let you know what's going on. I'll pour from 2 different ladles, pour both sides at the same time, and I'll do that right after. Put the pouring dams in place. Otherwise, it's going to make a real mess. I'm trying to find my pliers on the computer. Where that's at?
There's the burner.
Right there they are, hiding from me.
Now, you don't have to flux the pot or anything?
Solder what?
You don't have to flux the pot?
No. No. Yeah, there's a certain amount of debris on the top of that.
You have to skim it first, don't you?
I skim it when I scoop it out. Yes, these are hot. Now we're ready to go. Hopefully this goes right. You don't always get a good pour on it. You did, we'll try. We're done. We're done if it's a good pour. Give it just a minute to be sure it's set. It's still hot. Funny, huh? Give you a little story as a side note. A couple of years ago, I had a little ad in one of the national magazines about blueberries. Oh, maybe 3 lines at best, and most of that included my address. I got a call one day and says, can you do Mayberry? Yeah. Can you do rods? Yeah, I'll do rods. I didn't know who it was. And the guy says, this is Ford Motor Company calling. And I thought, boy, I'm in trouble for running an ad. That was the T100 project. I did those for them. Now the excess valve has to be broken away.
So the punchline, did you pour them?
Pardon?
So the punchline is, did you pour them for Ford?
Yeah, I did pour them for Ford. They brought me brand new block, and by the way, this is all secret, because this was in 2011. They brought me a brand new block, which they had cast up there, a brand new New Zealand crankshaft, a new type cam. At that point in time, nobody said it was tight, but anyhow, it brought me a new cam, and a blueprint. The blueprint was for a 1915 engine. And the 2 fellows that brought it down, one was dressed in what I call the IBM style, white shirt, string tie, dressed to the hilt, carrying his computer. The other guy came in sandals, shorts, and a ponytail. He was the one in charge of the project. And they said, well, how long will it take? And I gave them a time frame because they were working on deadline too. That's why the guy carried the computer, to get everything scheduled. And they said, well, if there's a problem, call us. I called them before they got to Detroit. The problem was the crankshaft they bought out of New Zealand was too short to fit in the block. Little side note there, little minor detail. But anyhow, it was an interesting project.
Did they get you a crankshaft stretcher?
That's what they wanted me to do, and I said, no guys, I didn't pay for this, you guys did, you did. Which they did do. And a few weeks later, the Detroit Free Press broke the story that Ford wasn't making Or remaking the 1914 cars.
Yeah, the 1914 project?
1914. That was the first year of production.
Didn't they have them bodies
Not
made?
production, but I'm sorry, the first year of,
Assembly line.
it said the assembly line.
They had the bodies made in what, Sweden or someplace?
Yeah. Bodies were made in Sweden. The fellow over there was good tinsmith. He made them. I think 16 were totally imported into this country. I met the man. He came over to assemble them together because they shipped them knocked down. And that was rather interesting. Okay, now we're done with this. Now, there's also some flashing which has to be taken care of. And there are some bubbles in this. They're small. I think they will machine out when we pour it. Now is the time you take care of shrinkage where that's pulled away from the block. You can ruin them this way or you can save them this way. That's all you need to do. Next, this battle is sticking up, cut away. Cut you well. You can use a file, you can use a grasp, which is what this is, or you can use a body file. If you've ever done any body work, it was used primarily when they were using lead to work bodies. This combination machine is a very early one. I think the serial number on it's 265. The one I had, one of the ones I have at home is in the 8000s. All of them are serial number and they've got a stamp right up here in the corner.
Are they just for the A and T?
Pardon?
Are they just for the A and T?
I don't know if they were used for the VA. I can't answer that, but definitely A and C. All right, now we've got that done. I think we're good things there. Bearing caps. The garage, the repair garage didn't do these caps. You bought them from the branch. Back in the day, that was just a matter of you order them and I don't know what the price was, but it wasn't much. These I have rebabbited myself. We have a jig which we use to do that. It is also done hot. Here's one right here. It has two bearing caps on it. Heat the jig, Keep the cap, stick them in here, clamp them down, and pour. And then you're all set to, you don't have to go to the brink. Well, now we're at the point, we'll install false cam. That simply slides in. The pouring frame, on the frame there's a little set screw here to push it back against the false camshaft. Always double check to be sure both of the fingers that were there are sticking back against the cam. Otherwise you get a crankshaft which fits in cattywampus. Experience tells me that because you can guess how that happened.
How do you remove the old babbit?
Torch. That's the way I take it out. It's the easiest way.
When you say torch, what do you mean? Like, does it break it apart when you heat it up, or does it just melt? And
Melt it out. And just use the acetylene torch. It's the quickest way to do it. And as evidence, that's what's all over the floor. That's what they carry. That's why you never do this work wearing shorts or open-toed shoes. Because you can't get them off quick enough. Anytime you're going to bore, you need to do shims. This is the point at which you would put them in. Usually I use a paint marker to mark one side of the cap. If you want to be consistent, personally I'll take like the Ford logo and always face them the same way each time. Doesn't matter which way, but be consistent when you're putting them in so that when you have to take them loose the next time, you know where they were and what direction they were at. I have some mixed caps here that don't all have the logo in the same place, but they do have a trademark. But that's still why I would prefer to use a paint marker so you consistently get them. called quick bolts. They simply hold the bearing caps in place so you can change them quickly.
That is if I get it down in there, that's better.
At this point, I can just change caps. Sometimes the reporting needs to get babbitt in the hole. Trying to do a flat line up the flat side so I can get this run basically nut on it. Telling you it's a quick build, it seems like it's taking a long time to get them together. Whenever you have a combination machine, this is one of the more challenging pieces right here, is to get this in there. Because you got to do it blind. End up having to take this back off, then. Not a hard process, but you've got to follow the steps in order. I think we're ready to go. I just want to air clear the ship. Top bearing will finish first, then the center, and then the rear. There's no break in this machine. We're done boring and now it has to be reamed. There's nothing wrong with this Babbit, it can be reused. You can save it, put it in the pot. Now you're supposed to take the bottom, go there. There's the front cap. Now this cap does have a hole in the casting. That could be repaired at this time. You just take a torch, note a little Babbit in it, put it back on, run the cutter through it again. For the purposes of demonstration, I'm not going to do that, sorry. Rear main cap. You did it again.
Guess we won't have to watch the video.
Sometimes these quick bolts get a flare on the end and they stick. That's what's happening here. That plus the fact this hasn't been used in quite some time. Center main bearing. It is a little bit longer than the front main bearing. The spring hasn't been used in a long time either, it's quite tight. Now, if you want to look at these before they're reamed, come on up here and do it. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and read them. They're a little bit rough at this point. With all the chips that have been in there, and the cutter. Bring your finger down across it. You can see the purpose of the ring is going to take care of all that. Oh, here's the oil that we just cut out. You use a drill bit. I use a paper cutter. Now put the cap back on and go to the next step.
You roll it out.
It's in the frame.
Oh, in the frame.
Yeah.
You know when they had out the fairgrounds?
Oh, is this?
They had them all taken. Fairgrounds. That took a whole, it took that whole crowd out of things. Yeah, going down the road. Yeah, going out of there.
Yeah. That was the
I got a tape over that, but it's fun to watch.
It was neat.
The airplanes coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot.
From my side, folks. Four motors in the race.
Are you from here?
Huh?
Are you from here?
Yeah.
Might get pinned. No, not yet.
That was good.
I heard you, you're not here months.
I had a meeting with
I have two models.
Get your hand.
Do you drive, or do you have one?
Nope.
Just enjoy it.
Well, I got a free bar. Well, fixed it. Good. All fixed up.
This machine, the machine, the TV machine. Couple of taper pins simply keep things in alignment, hopefully. I always run a safety bolt in it so it doesn't flip back over. Thank you. It's a matter of standing here talking now. About 3 to 5 minutes. I'll pull the lemur out of it, and you can all come up and take a look at those. The thrust on the end of the caps has to be trimmed on the end of the rear main cap before you can put it. Before you put the crankshaft in place, but other than that, it's basically done. I've not worked with this before, but we'll see what we've got. I'm not gonna wipe this out yet, you'll see what it has cut out in reaming. I'll leave it lay there. Bearings are better than what they were. Got a few ridges left. Like I said, this is the first time I've worked with this reamer. But it's an improvement over what it was after before. So that's the process of using a combination machine for pouring bearings.
You drill out the hole.
Yeah, and the whole set we drilled out yet for oil. And center one had a simple cut came this way. We had a double cut one from this direction.
The feed mechanism is different.
That's just the process.
You go
Yeah, I'm
forward,
looking at the
forward,
difference
and
in how much material is
do
left.
the bearings and empty.
Yeah, but it's not the same. See, I have to compare it to that one, this one.
But it's not just the bearing. More and more, and it's part of the fixture. And it's got a drill point, and it's got some big gears, and you can slip them so they're disengaged.
Now, there's no trying to walk.
Back.
Crosses all over.
Yeah.
Back without a turn. So you don't have to lay the dead in that when you take the fan off.
You have those clamps or whatever?
I do have.
You always have to remember to pull out.
Otherwise, you have to put it in.
Otherwise, you'd have to use.
Otherwise, it's not gonna get
Rod
anywhere.
anywhere. Yeah. And with rod, you had to use rod main rolls. Nowadays, it's a good feed drill, you know.
Usually I use the
Secret, and like this, you had trouble getting, and I mean, idea was good. You don't have to do good original, you try to make them.
So you said that's ready to go like
Cut
this?
that through, you said you had some hard.
Well, you'd have to trim off the excess.
I had.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Petty machine press.
Pardon?
Petty machine press.
Personally, I do it on the lathe. They did make a lathe here to do the horseshoe thing. So they're at 40 pounds, so I got so much press on that's the material. I will put it down to fitting surge. Thank you. Took a little longer, but probably.
You should sit on the back of that trailer and put it there.
This is.
You're all looking pretty dangerous. That's the guy that passed. That's the guy that
What brand?
I didn't really pay attention.
Well, Shellberry is coming somewhere.
I think I'm